So welcome, thank you for coming. Today we're going to talk about businesses and stores in Franklin. We'll talk about grocery stores and markets. And my usual sources, Franklin Register, that was the first newspaper. Franklin Sentinel was the second newspaper. Stanley Chilson's collection of films, and I've taken a lot of pictures from the films. Sanborn Fire Insurance maps, a lot of good information in them. And personal pictures and postcards. People are very generous, so let me take pictures of their pictures and allow me to use them. So it really makes for a nice presentation. And Alan Earls does a nice job on the Franklin Observer. If you're not familiar with it, every morning at 7 o'clock you'll get an email and all the news in Franklin, and it's really a good publication to have. So we're going to do two things. We'll talk about the downtown markets and stores of Franklin. Then we'll talk about the neighborhood ones, because there's a lot of them. I mean, a lot of them. Charles Fail. Up where the library is, that's the corner of School Street and Main Street. There used to be a hotel there called the Central House. Next to it was a hall. It was called Daniel's Hall, and that was on the second floor. The first floor had a couple of stores. One of the stores was a guy named Charles Fales, and he had a store there. That was one grocery store. But that building burnt down in 1886 when they had the big fire in Franklin. That was a fire that took out the Universalist Church, Central House, Daniel's Hall, and a straw factory in the back. It was unbelievable, huge, huge fire. So, Charles Fail also had a store downtown, and it was called the Boston Branch Grocery and Tea House. And there it is. I'm not exactly sure what year this picture was taken, but it's in the Metcalf block. And you can just see what says Grocery and Tea Company. So he was there. Now in 1913, James Reardon had a shoe business. And when Fales left that area, Reardon moved in and took over the spot. Reardon had a shoe store right next door to it. Jenks Cotton and Company. Now this building is on Dean Avenue, and it's still standing there to this day, 29 Dean Avenue. If you're familiar with Duke Yadisania, it had Vet Med Supply. It was right across the street from my house where I grew up. That's the building that was there. It was originally built as a jewelry store, but then in 1886, the jewelry store took over, left, and Jenks Cotton and Company moved in as a grocery store. That would be Henry Jenks and Daniel Cotton. And so they were there. Grigori and Zunino. Now downtown, where Thunderbird Cleaners, we all remember Thunderbird Cleaners, was in the building that was, well, that building was torn down in 1913, and that's when they built the Thunderbird Cleaner building. But in that building, two guys named Mariano Grigori and Jabati Zunini moved from Milford to Franklin, and they had a grocery store there. And in August of 1910, Mr. Grigori bought out Mr. Zunino, and then he conducted the business by himself. But then in August of 1912, Mr. Grigori was forced out because Mr. Chilson, James Chilson, that owned the block, decided he wanted to tear the building down and put up a new building. That's the Thunderbird Cleaner building. So that meant Mr. Zunino had to move out. So I mean Mr. Grigori, wrong guy. And he moved to his home on Beaver Street, and he sold things from there. So, Peck on the Square. How many remember the Exchange building up on next to the town bridge? Because Martin's department store was there. They tore it down in 1962. So, but anyway, that was there. That building actually dates back to the Civil War days, believe it or not. And there's a picture taken around 1868, 1869. The first company that I was able to establish that was there was Jenks, Craig and Company. They sold flour and grain and other groceries. And then in later years, T.M. Turner took over the spot. They had a grocery store. And then in the late 1890s, Peck and Field established their business there. But then in 1902, Mr. Field decided to withdraw, and George Peck continued in that store on his own, and he renamed it Peck on the Square. And then in December of 1909, they had a fire in the building. It didn't cause a real lot of damage, but it was enough that Mr. Peck had to temporarily move his store out of there. He moved it down to the Morse block, where Franklin Furniture was, until they repaired the building, and then he moved back. Now, in 1932, he affiliated with the IGA, which stood for the Independent Grocers Alliance. And this was a new concept now the IGA brought forth. What it was, back in the old days, if you went to the grocery store, you say, okay, I need a can of tomatoes. The guy would go over, grab it off the shelf, put it on the counter, because what else you need? Oh, a can of soup? Okay, I'll go over. He would do all that for you. And then he would add up all the prices on the brown paper bag, he'd add them up, and then it's okay, you go $5.33, whatever. But in 1932, when the IGA came along, they said, we're going to change it so that you go into the store and you go around and you get all your groceries and bring them to the counter. So that was a new concept back then. Yeah, that's what IGA was all about. Yeah. This picture was taken 1940-41. Oh, 1932. Yeah. In fact, this picture, you can see Gertrude's coffee shop right there. That was Gertrude Pellegri, and her mother. She was the mother of Arthur C. Pellegri. Had a little coffee shop there. So that was between 1940 and 42. That's how I know that was that time frame. And there's George Peck on the day he retired, 1942. You know, everybody dressed up back then. That was probably his normal clothing for the day. Everybody did. Yeah. The Chilson Market, James Chilson Market. Obviously, we know where that is. That was the brick building. That building was the original brick building, but they took the two top floors off at some point. I'm not sure. I think it was in the 70s or 80s. But the bottom floor is the original building from 1913. But James Chilson established, and I'll show you a picture of it. That was a wooden building that was there. He built that in the 1870s, I think, or 1880s. He established his market, Chilson's Market. And that was right across the street from today's post office, as we know. And then in 1884, he had a nephew named Austin Chilson. Austin Chilson was the father of Stanley Chilson. Well, Austin Chilson was a 22, 23-year-old kid, and he was quite an expert at cutting up a calf. He apparently set a record. He cut it up within 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And that was faster than a lot of adults. So he really knew what he was doing. Eventually, he would have his own market. But what he would do first, there was a guy on East Central Street, his name was David Corson. We'll talk about him in a few minutes. He had a meat market. Well, Austin Chilson took that market over and called it the People's Market. And we'll talk about that. And then in 1891, Richardson and Emerson took over the Chilson Market, and they established their market there. That was Fremont Richardson and George Emerson. And then eventually, Mr. Richardson would move down to East Central Street and take over the People's Market. And Austin Chilson went there too as well. And then in 1910, another grocery store was established there at 44 Main Street. Some guy named C.H. Fitzpatrick. So there's that. There's the David Corson Meat Market. We know where that building is. Or was, I should say. That's where the David Corson Meat Market was first established. Now, the building had an interesting history. There was an article in the Franklin Sentinel, and it said that in 1887, Aaron Hotwell Morse decided to move his gas house. Now, whatever a gas house would be, I'm not sure, but he moved his gas house to that spot. So, and they did that so that David Corson could set up his meat market. And what he would do is he would auction off meat twice a week. And then in 1891, Austin Chilson took it over and renamed it the People's Market. And so now he's striking out on his own. Actually, 1891 is about the year he got married. So, you know, he established himself on his own in that market. And then in 1910, Fremont Richardson moved over and took over, and they named it Richardson's Market. And then he had to retire. Fremont Richardson had to retire in 1910. His son took it over, Edgar Richardson. Oh, and they also hired Charlie Quinn from the Franklin Grocery to work there. And what happened was Charlie Quinn took the business over in 1930, and he named it Quinn's Market. And then, you know, one thing all the research I've done, you see these employees, they eventually become the new owners, and you see that happen a lot. Like 3 and 4 generations of employees, like drugstores. You know, Mike Carney started in 1912 working for Albert Mason, then he took it over. You know, all kinds of people doing that. So, and then he gave it to, he sold it in 1954 to Jimmy O'Connell, and they renamed it O'Connell's Market. And that was taken the day that Charlie Quinn retired, and that was Jimmy O'Connell. Chilson's Market. Now this would be Austin Chilson's Market on Depot Street. In July of 1897, Austin Chilson established this market on Depot Street, and he moved over from the People's Market to here. And he stayed there until about the late 40s when he retired. And there's Austin Chilson, hard at work. Yeah. And if you look very carefully in the window, you can see the White Star Cafe. That was when they were on Depot Street. The White Star Cafe was on Depot Street. So this picture was taken a little bit after 1925, probably in late 20s probably. Bresnahan Grocery Company. Okay. Now this advertisement is from September of 1897, when Patrick Bresnahan opened up the Bresnahan Grocery Company in the Morris Opera House block. There's the advertisement. I'm not sure which spot it was in there, but it's one of those. There's about 4 or 5 different stores in there. And then the Opera House itself was on the 2nd floor where the big windows are. Yep. And then Bresnahan moved over, in 1899, Bresnahan moved over to the First Ray block on Main Street. That's where the Faber's hardware store was, and the Elks are upstairs. Yep. And then in March of 1906, Bresnahan Grocery closed in the First Ray block, and they moved over to where Connie's Drugstore used to be. Over in that. That's called the A.B. Fletcher block, right there. And in May of 1906, the Franklin Grocery Company opened up in the spot that was vacated by them. So now we've got the Franklin Grocery Company in that spot. And they were there till 1915, when they sold out. They went out of business. They auctioned off all the stock and the fixtures of the company. And then a company, E.E. Gray, moved in. And then eventually E.E. Gray moved over to across the street to where Newberry's used to be. And the E.E. Gray Company, they took that spot. And then in 1931, they had a small fire in the building, but it was extinguished within an hour, so it wasn't too bad. But that's what was happening there. So. The Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. Did you know that's what A&P stood for? From what I can gather, the first A&P that came to Franklin, I might be wrong on that, but I think my research shows in 1926, the opening of the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company opened up in that block, and the more commonly known as the A&P. Now in February of 1928, the Morris Opera House was heavily damaged by fire, so they rebuilt this block. And unbelievable. The Morris Opera House fire happened in February of 1928. By May, they were putting the stores were being, people were going into those stores. In 3 or 4 months, they had that block just about built. It took them a little longer for the theater, they didn't open that till October. But just within 5 or 6 months, the whole block was built. But anyway, they moved back into there. And then I saw this article in 1933 Sentinel, and it said that they were opening a store at 23 Main Street. Now, 23 Main Street is where Newberry's was, so I'm thinking that's probably where the Gray store used to be, pretty sure. And then another one opened up in the A.J. Cataldo block, and that was in June of 1933, so I'm not sure if they moved from there to here or if there was two different stores. I don't know, but all I can go is by the advertisements and the year, the date that it showed up in the paper, and there it is. So, yeah, Gloria chain stores. Yeah, there was a couple of them. We're going to talk about them too. So, yeah. The A&P. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. And then in 1937, it was announced that the new A&P was going to move into this block, this building. Now, this building was originally built as a 40-car garage by a guy named Carl Harris. In fact, if you can barely read it on the top, it says C.L. Harris. And Carl Harris had a garage right next to it, a gas station, and he built that as a garage for storage. Even had a little car wash in there, too. And so eventually, it was taken over, and A&P established their business in there. And of course, the thing I remember was the A&P was the 8 o'clock coffee. You walk in there and smell that. Oh man, it was great.
Plaid stamps before green stamps?
That's a good one. Yeah, plaid stamps. Well, there was plaid stamps. There was S&H green stamps. There was top value stamps. Yeah, there was all kinds of stamps. But
Even had cornmeal on the floor.
oh yeah, I know.
Joe, you'll get this?
That picture was taken. Well, actually, that picture was taken later. That was almost into the 50s, I think. But they moved. The A&P established there in 1937.
Smell like autocrat coffee.
Yeah, I know. Huh? 8 o'clock coffee. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The Main Street Market. Some of these markets only lasted a short time. I'm not sure how long it lasted. Now, this picture was actually a later picture. And it shows. I'm showing the location of the market. This was when a guy named there was a candy store there. Forget his name. Anyways, this advertisement is the grand opening of the Main Street Market. Belgenio D'Orazio was the proprietor. It was in that location. That was right next to. Well, that's where Victor Pizzini's shoe store is today. And yeah. And how about the diner there? Huh? That was when the diner was about 4 years old, right there. That's when it was the Franklin Diner. Oh, look at Vargin's Market. Here we go. Vargin's Market was located at 54 Main Street. And in the 1970s, they moved to West Central Street, and they eventually became Ann's Market. So, anybody know who the policeman is? Walter Carr, otherwise known as Baldy. Don't call him that to his face, though. And he had hair. I don't know why they call him that. But okay, there's the inside of the Vargin's Market. When you walked in, you could take a right, and you walk down the aisle. That's what this aisle was. And yeah, they had Peapod back before Peapod was really a thing. You know, in fact, you could literally call up the store, and Marion Restainer was probably behind the counter, and you'd see the phone cradled in her thing, and she's writing stuff down. Okay, I need a pound of this, a little bit of that. She'd make a list, and Henry Restainer would probably be the guy to walk around, do the shopping. They would bag it, they would deliver it, free. And Henry Restainer worked there too, yeah. But yeah, that was unbelievable. Okay, who knows who those three guys are? Don Duncan, that's right. Then Greg Vargin and Harry Vargin. But Don Duncan, yeah, that was him. Yeah. That's the meat department right there. Yeah. And how about those prices? Huh? Look at that. Oven-ready turkeys. Wow. And then as you're walking back up towards the front of the store, now the James B. McKinnon grocery store. How many remember that block? It was down on Union Street, right at the intersection of Union Street and Cottage Street. I've heard it referred to as the Bulletin block. I mean, Harry Bulletin must have owned it at one time. When Stanley Chilson marked all his pictures, he said the Bulletin's block, so that's kind of what I refer to it as. But anyway, they had a fire there at one point, but it was a good picture to show you the two buildings right there. But back in the early 1890s, a guy named James McKinnon established a grocery store there. But about a year later, he decided to move to downtown Franklin. So he built a building. The arrow's pointing to that building. And that's where the Rome restaurant is today. But that building wasn't there until James McKinnon actually had it built. The building to the right was the King Barber Shop. The building to the left was the Enegrin Bakery. So in 1894, James McKinnon established a grocery store in that location. So it was a grocery store that first started there. Eventually it became a bowling alley. They extended the building really deep. They had a bowling alley and a pool room in there. And then eventually Frank Brunelli bought the whole block. And they moved the Clark Square Diner into that spot. So it was a Clark Square Diner until 1948, when they turned it into Brunelli's Diner, which a lot of us remember. And in 65, Kami's Restaurant, and then the Rome Restaurant. First National. This was downtown. And this was in the building where where the Benjamin Franklin Savings Bank was. There was a building there. And that's where First National was there. Now, that started out as a Ginter store. And the company changed their name to First National in 1926, I think it was. So then it became a First National food store. And the woman, her name is Lydia Ray Peirce. She was the wife of Arthur Peirce, who was the headmaster at Dean. Every day she would go out in a ride in her carriage, every day. So that's her.
That, to the left, is that Dr. Hussey's office?
That's Dr. Hussey's. Now that, just to show you where this is, Vargin's Market would be in that where the awning is. That was going up to the stairs. Because that was like 52 Main Street was up on the top of the stairs. Vargin's was 54 Main Street. First National would be 58 and then 60. But that's Dr. Hussey, and there was another doctor up there with him too.
Oh, my father's
Yeah.
doctor.
Ah, Dr. Hussey, yeah? Wow. Huh. Yeah. And then they moved down to Cottage Street, the Bulletin block, and they were there. I'm pretty sure that's the same sign too. If we look at, compare the two, yeah, same sign. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there's a boy right in the middle of the picture with his arm like this and wearing a necktie. I'm pretty sure that's my Uncle Fred. Pretty sure.
What was he doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Bike tours, a bike race?
Well, here's the thing. Back in the 30s, bicycling was a big thing, thanks to Landry Cycle, cousins of mine. Yeah. In fact, they did business right across the street from this, down on Union Street. You know what Jimmy D's is today? That's where the Landry Cycle first started. And every year they would have bicycle parades. And I guarantee you, this was that year when they were going to have a parade. They said, we need to take a group picture. Where can we get? Let's get in front of that building over there. So they did that. I guarantee you that's what it was. Because Chilson took a lot of videos and pictures of the bicyclists downtown, and they were riding their bikes through town and very proud and everything. But anyway, that's what that was all about. And so, yep. Then, in the 1930s, First National would relocate to the Depot Square block. And they were there until 1946 when they moved over to West Central Street. That's when they moved to here. Now that's where the black box is today. Yeah. And you know whose house is to the left? Lorraine Metcalf. That's right. I love to tell the story of when they tore that house down, they tore it and they built they dug a hole, they just buried the house. Every year they got a kind of, the driveway, there's a parking lot there with the asphalt and this big depression every year because it's sinking. Every year they got to retar it. Yeah. I think it's Arthur Pellegri, I think, in the front. Is that Dan Croster in the back? Yes. Yeah. Lester on the, that's probably Lester, yeah. Okay.
Looks like Johnny Martin on the far left.
Okay, Johnny Martin, all right. Okay, yep. It's always good to have people that know these people because it helps me to understand who they are. Yeah, good. And then First National moved down to West Central Street. Matthew Van Leeuwen had the Continental Nurseries down there. And then they tore it all down, and they built the new First National Plaza. Yeah. Stop and Shop. Now, back in the early 30s, A. Simon and Son used to be in this building, and then they moved to their new spot on East Central Street. That's when the Economy Grocery Store moved in. The Economy Grocery Store changed their name to Stop and Shop in 1938. But that's where that was. And then there's Stop and Shop. And then when Stop and Shop took it over, they took over the spot where that Gertrude's Coffee Shop was. When the building was originally built, they had a big store and a small store. Then Stop and Shop took the whole thing. And then in '63, they were replaced by Farmland. How about those prices, huh? Boneless chuck, 49 cents a pound. Oh, marshmallow fluff, 15 cents. Wow. Bananas, 10 cents a pound. Wow. That's in 1963. The Ideal Fruit Store, right near the bridge. In the late 1800s, Amadeo J. Cataldo came to Franklin, and he established a little fruit store on East Central Street, right by there. And then in May of 1930, Jimmy Cahias and some guy, Mr. Constable,s the article didn't tell me what his first name was, so Mr. Constable,s they had a partnership, but Mr. Constable,s withdrew, and Mr. Cahias took over the Ideal Fruit stand. That'd be Jimmy. And then Mr. Constable,s would operate the Redstone lunch restaurant, which was right next door. That eventually became Jimmy's Liquor Store. James Ray, one of the Ray brothers, the three Ray brothers, he established a grocery store in 1883 in the first Ray block that was downtown, the first Ray block that we talked about. And then he sold it in May of 1894 to Frank Bates. That's the advertising for him. The post office was in that block, by the way. That's why they call it the post office block. The Franklin Cash Store. Harry Bullocken. Harry Bullocken Sr. Harry had two sons, Arthur and Harry Jr. But Harry Bullocken Sr. established a store there in 1898. It's called the Franklin Cash Store. They sold coal and grain and meat and groceries. Eventually they sold oil when oil started to be used. But in February of '43, rationing from World War II, rationing started to really take a toll on the business. And as a result, Harry decided to close the grocery end of that store, but he kept the oil and coal business alive, and his two sons ran that. That's why it was H. Bullocken Sons. And then eventually they moved their business over to the building on the bridge where King's Barbershop used to be. The Central Fish Market, right on the corner of Cottage Street. Two brothers, Miller brothers, got together, James Miller and George Miller. And in 1898, they sold it to Captain Edward Payne. And then he operated it until 1910 when he sold it to Herbert Richardson. So it was a lot of fish markets and meat markets too. And then there was grocery stores, so they kind of specialized. And Spears Fish Market, almost across the street. And that building is where the large building with the flagpole, that was torn down to build the A.J. Cataldo block, just to give you an idea where this was. But Spears Fish Market was there, and then eventually it was taken over by the Boston Fish Market. Dio's Variety Store. And that was in the Metcalf block. So was in 1908 for that one. McCann Brothers. I think some people might remember McCann Brothers. It was downtown. I guess it was good for ice cream and things like that. So, yeah. It's actually more of a restaurant than a store, so, but I threw it in there. Staples the Grocer. And that was also in the Morse Opera House block. In fact, that's the same location that Harry Bullock took over. Yeah, a guy named, what was his name? His name was Albert Staples. And he was in the 1890s when that happened. And then that's the top one. Then the bottom one, he sold it to M.J. Cullen. So, yeah. The Franklin Public Market. That was on Main Street in the Flax Block. Now that would be the same place right on the bridge where, is a Chinese restaurant there now? What's a garden, something garden? Yeah, that's where that was. Eventually that would turn into Strickland and Rustino, which we'll talk about. This is 1926 for this. Gloria Chain Store. Now there was a couple of them, and I get a little confused about the Gloria Chain Stores. I mean, I've seen advertised where one was here, then one was there, and I'm not sure if that one moved to the next spot, or did they have multiple Gloria Chain Stores? Anybody help me on that one? No? No, don't know. Yeah, we're going to talk about that one, but this one, this is the first one that I saw. This is from 1944, September of 44. It shows it in the A.J. Cataldo block. And then they moved to Metcalf block, which is on Main Street. That was in 1945. And then this is probably the one this is the one that was in the Morse Opera House block in 1948. So this was established in 48. So that's the Gloria Chain Store. Vozella's Market. I think we all remember the guy that ran that. The guy that ran that? Guy Vozella. Yep. And then they also had the Venice Cafe was there too. Yep. Yep. In fact, when Guy Vozella's father, Raphael Vozella, first bought this property, it was a property that was owned by Dr. Smith, I think it was. To the left, there was also some land. He was going to build a theater there, and it was in 1927. But then 1928, the Morse Opera House burnt down, and the Morse family decided to build a theater there. So Mr. Vozella said, you know, it probably was not really good having two theaters competing with each other. So he built a gas station there, and that became Malloy's Garage. Danello's Market. Now, if I get anything wrong here, Al, let me know, okay? Keep me honest. So anyway, there's Danello's Market when it was downtown. This was taken from the early 50s, and it shows Danello's Market. They had previously done business at the corner of Union Street and Cottage Street until they sold it to Francis McGuire and Dominic Genoa for Liberty Grocery. Right? Strickland and Rustino. Right on the town bridge. Yep. And this was taken, I'm guessing, in the 40s. Chilson was using color film at that point. So 1940s, we'll say. And there they are, Ed Strickland and Henry Rustino. Yeah. And that really was a small, when you think about it, it's a small building. You know, it wraps around like a V, but it's a very small store. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Kingfish, as you call them, yeah. Yep. Then he moved to Vargin's Market. And now the neighborhood markets in Franklin. Brunelli's Market. Back in 1950, the grand opening, I don't know if it was a grand opening or reopening, but Frank Brunelli established a market in that building. I haven't seen any really good pictures of the market when it was a market, but I know that's the building, so I figured, well, there it is. Yep. This is April 20th, 1950, when this ad was taken. Yep. Yep. And then in 1954, they built the first supermarket. And I can remember going there, and a lot of people too. Yep. And that obviously was when you could go around and do your own shopping. And I've seen Stanley Chilson was there for the grand opening of that. The place was mobbed. It's unbelievable. Everyone wanted to get there. And same when they moved across the street, actually. Then they moved across the street and became Brunelli's Star Market because they merged with the Star Market family. And that place was mobbed. Unbelievable. They had a big ceremony. Mrs. Brunelli was there to cut the ribbon. A lot of dignitaries were there. It was quite a thing, yeah. 1963. You can see guys are still up on the roof putting the finishing touches on the place. So, yeah.
Hey, Joe, can you go back
Yeah.
a slide,
Yes?
please?
Yep.
That big house that you see there, that was where Miss Paxarian. Remember our teacher Paxarian?
Paxarian, okay.
Paxarian lived in that big house.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's not there, is it now? Still there?
Now it's,
CVS?
yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Okay. Charles Acaro Market. I think we know what that building was, or what it used to be, or what it turned out to be. It eventually became the Union Cafe. Yeah. And then it grew. But it was established in the late 30s by Charles Acaro. And then in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, the Colaci family turned it into Union Cafe.
Best pizzas in town.
Oh, I know it. And you could, we used to call up, say, okay, we want to order some spaghetti. So you bring your own bowl. And we had this blue bowl, it was, kind of a round bowl. We'd give it to them, and they'd fill it up with spaghetti, and they put aluminum foil on the top. And it was hot, so to have it on your lap on the way home is like, whoa. And by the way, the phone number was 528-9885, just in case you were wondering. So. Oh, Turco and Pisano. I wish I had a picture of the place, but I don't. Ah, sorry. But Rose is here. You have a picture, Rose? Ah, well, let's go to meet at Rose's house. Yeah, I wish we'd known. All right, I'll tell you, we'll figure it in. We'll fit it in somehow.
Make some good sausages, too.
Oh, I know it, huh? A lot of good things. Yeah. Today it's Franklin TV. Ferrara's Market. Pete Ferrara. But before Pete Ferrara, it was Zappatelli's Market. And then Pete Ferrara took it over, and they named it Ferrara's Market. Yeah. In fact, recently I saw Valentina Ferrara. I used to go in the store and talk to her. I saw her at something recently, so yeah, for many years. Yeah.
What street is that?
That's the corner of Washington Street, right on the corner. That's is it Saxon Street, I think, or no, yeah, Saxon. Yeah, Gebb Street is the next one over. Yeah, Saxon. No, this is Arlington Street's here, Washington's there. Yeah, and Union Street. Oh, yeah, Union Street keeps going.
Pizza's right now.
Is it a pizza? Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Nasudi's Market. Oh, yeah. Remember that place? Yeah. It's on the corner of Peck Street and North Park Street. I've often wondered if the people that live there now know that there was a grocery store there at the time. I don't know. Yeah, I wondered.
Joe Sholati.
Yeah, because I remember Billy Sholati used to work there too.
Yeah.
But the house is owned by Nasudis though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause that was, at first I thought it was Sholati's Market. Or maybe, was it Sholati's Market or
Yeah, yeah.
it was Sholati's Market?
Billy's parents.
I better fix that then.
Joe Sholati.
Joe Sholati, okay. So it's not Nasudi's Market, it's Sholati's? Give me a minute, I gotta fix that. I'll fix it later. Huh, okay, well, that's good to know. Because they really don't have a sign saying what the name of the market, well, they did back then anyway. Okay, yeah. DeVita's Market. Yep. I know it. Oh, that's a recent picture. But it used to be Johnny's Market. Yeah. George Cosmol, anybody knew him? Know him? Yep. Right on the corner of Uncas Avenue and East Central Street. Yep. Dacey Brothers. They established a little market down on Lincoln Street. In fact, I saw a picture of Ken Rose. Remember Ken Rose was the vice principal? I guess he was working there in his later years. Yeah.
They used to have the best eggnog.
Oh, really?
Grandma Daisy's.
Oh, wow. We did a little. No, on New Year's Eve, yeah. Hart's Grocery. Yeah, almost near Beach Street. Yeah. Let's see, this was taken in 1966. Open 7 days a week. Huh?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the GB dairy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. You're right. Yeah.
Pizza place next
It's
door.
a pizza place, huh? Now, this building is just up the street, right around the corner, actually, on the top of Beaver Street. This is Union Street looking towards like the Commons there, and then Beaver Street right here. You can see the street sign. Right on that corner, that house was a grocery store. Yeah, in the late 1890s, though, so that's why you wouldn't remember it. So it was established by a guy named Henry Shumsky, and eventually it was taken over by J. Davis and Company. In 1902, it was taken over. But yeah, there was a grocery store there. Yeah. And then in 1907, the Union Cash Grocery Store, corner of Union and Beaver Street. So they took it over. And eventually became a private residence. Bonnie Brook Farm. That was at the corner of Brook Street and Lincoln Street. And this was taken in 1923. Charles Fearing was the proprietor. And eventually they have a gas station there. I don't know, what's there today? Anybody know? Yeah, it's the same thing, gas station? Yeah.
I think it's a little more.
Yeah, a liquor store?
Ruggles.
Okay.
Ruggles.
Oh.
Ruggles is garage.
Oh, really? Okay.
Garage closed and works.
Oh.
Eddie Limberto moved down there. Garage.
Eddie Limberto? Okay, because I know, did Eddie Limberto own the Sunoco station on East Central Street too?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we talked about that before, yeah, okay. Yeah. Ah, Liberty Grocery. In 1932, John Danello established Danello's Market at the corner of Union Street and Cottage Street. Is that about the right year, Al? 1932?
Yeah, 32, 33.
Yeah. And then in 1944, he sold the market to Francis McGuire and Dominic Genoa, and they established Liberty Grocery. And the picture was taken in the 1950s. Now this is before they took Cottage Street and did the, this like this and then the other like that. It was just still a straight shot all the way through. This is a Union Street right here and Cottage Street.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Agway.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, you could just barely see Agway on the left. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people remember the little bar room that was in the back of the place. Yeah. The Red Onion. And who owned it? Disty DeCecco, yeah. In fact, Disty, apparently the story went where the last person shut off the lights and close up and lock up and just leave the keys in there. We'll get them in the morning. And never got ripped off. Everybody was honest. Well, last one out, shut the lights off. The cash register was still full. McCabe and Cody. Here we are at the Bulletin Block again. In the late 1890s, Bernard McCabe and John Cody established the McCabe and Cody Market in that spot right there. These buildings were built separate. This one was the first one to be built, and then that one was built. So, yeah. Now, H. Bilizarian, I think his first name was Hugas. Yeah. But anyway, Mr. Bilizarian established his grocery store there. That ad was taken in 1932. So, yeah. Joseph Danello's Meat Market. I saw this advertisement and says, oh, that's... Yeah. So this advertises from the 1947 Oscar yearbook of Franklin High School. Joe Danello operated his meat market in the 1940s. Is it in that location now, or was that one of the other ones? I'm pretty sure. The address shows that as 331, and that would be 331 there, so yeah. Okay, sometimes I get that wrong, and it's nice to have somebody to keep me honest. Now, this building where Davis Thayer Elementary School stands right now. Before that was the Franklin Hotel. That was the Davis Thayer Homestead. And that's where then became the Franklin Hotel. But in that building right there was where Benjamin Franklin Savings Bank got started. Then they moved to Dean Avenue around 1902. And at that point, a guy named Joseph Fagan established a grocery store in that spot. So, yep. Pizzani's. Now, it says Union Street near McCarthy Street. I think I know the building. Like if you're looking at, if you're standing at McCarthy Street, is it to the left a little bit? And it kind of looks like a store could have been there.
Yeah, it was downstairs.
Oh, it's downstairs?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I saw that, I said, well, I'll throw it up there, and I figured somebody would know. Because this is from 1952, so, yeah. Yep. So. Huh, the end. How do you like that? Yeah. So. Yeah, thanks.
I think probably because they have so many grocery stores.
This program was made possible by your Franklin friends and neighbors. Good folks just like you. Thanks for supporting Franklin TV. And thanks for watching.